Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to our virtual event, Unstructured Data Quality and the Future of Enterprise AI. My name is Garrett. I will be moderating today. A few housekeeping items before we dive in. Uh, Please ask questions. You can use the Q&A tool, and we will do our best to answer all of those at the end of the discussion. Feel free to use the chat box to introduce yourself or connect with others. And then this session is being recorded and will be available on demand shortly after, so you can rewatch it later or share with a friend. Before we jump into the questions, I want to introduce who we have on the line and provide a little bit of context about who Anomalo is and what we do. So as I said earlier, my name is Garrett. I lead technology alliances here at Anomalo. So I really sit at the intersection between Anomalo and complementary technologies such as Databricks. As such, I am very much looking forward to this conversation. If you aren't already familiar with what we do at Anomalo, we're revolutionizing the way that enterprises approach data quality. So instead of relying on rules or other manual techniques, we use AI to automatically detect issues at scale. This not only reduces the time and effort of setting up and maintaining those manual rules or other techniques, but it also ensures that quality inputs drive your data outputs. Now, historically, we've focused on structured and semi-structured data, but earlier this year, we launched monitoring for unstructured data, a critical input to any AI workload, giving enterprises the ability to monitor all types of data, which is what we're here to talk about today. Now, over to the people why you tuned in, our VIPs. Ari, let's start with you. Please introduce yourself, share what you do at Databricks, and your background working with data and AI.
Hey, thanks, Garrett and Vicky. Looking forward to our conversation. So I'm Ari Kaplan, the head of evangelism at Databricks. I've spent my entire career trying to uh, solve in every single industry I could get my hands on. How can you get more information, data, and apply that to improve whatever the business is? So probably most known for sports analytics, one of the first five people known to have gotten a job in the front office of a sports organization. And now that is like a multi-billion dollar global market with tens of thousands of employees. So the great thing in the theme with Moneyball is that data giving you better insights in human behavior and how you can apply the digital world to real life. It actually works. It changed that industry. And one reason, we're all here, Anomalo, Databricks, and the whole ecosystem is it works. You can get incredible business drive. So that's been my personal journey. I've worked with Formula One, with McLaren, trying to apply data and AI to that. And now I enjoy my role working with great customers, helping them along that same journey, since the world's changing super quickly now.
Love that. I'm a huge sports nerd, and you're right. We take, sports analytics for granted these days and just assumed it was always there. But it's incredible that at one point it was not. Thank you, Ari. Excited to have you here. Vicky, same question. Introduce yourself, share what you do here at Anomalo and your background working with data and AI. Vicky, you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you, Garrett. And Ari, I had no idea you used to work at Formula One. Actually, Formula One is my favorite sport, and it's because of all the data. So I would love to pick your brain and ask you more about that experience.
Let's do
But
it.
I'm Vicky. I'm the GM of generative AI here at Anomalo, focused specifically on our newest product, which is a product around unstructured data. So you can tell by my shirt here. I started with Anomalo just about at the very beginning. I was one of the first hires here. And I spent most of my time, as Garrett mentioned, building the AI that sits on top of structured data to identify issues without you having to manually monitor or define or maintain those rules. And I would say since the new LLMs became GA and kind of a household name, it became immensely clear that we're going to need to do the exact same thing for unstructured data as well. So that's been my focus over the last year and a half, shifted to specifically unstructured data and how we use AI to monitor it and help deploy it at scale in a trusted way.
Lovely. Perfect. Well, to kick things off, Ari, I'm going to point this one at you. Actually, coupling off what Vicky just said, LLMs and AI have become a household name. It's hard to read any news article without seeing them in the first few sentences. And as they become not only a household name, but really core to enterprise strategy, where are you seeing the biggest early wins? How is this driving value for customers that you're talking to?
Yeah, it's been phenomenal to see after, a lot of us on this call and listening in have been doing traditional business intelligence and then um, like classical machine learning, like predictive analytics and classification that just 2.5 years ago, ChatGPT, Gen AI really burst onto the scenes. And at first, from my experiences or our experience at Databricks, like very few companies were having LLMs in production 2.5 years ago. Then, as they started trusting data, which is probably the biggest challenge still, um, the adoption, like maybe a year ago, about a third customers were doing something in Gen AI, and now it's like over half. And some analyst firms are predicting like the majority of companies are going to have Gen AI in production by the end of next year. So some of the early wins, there's internal wins, and that's where I think most companies are. They're deploying LLMs to help them internally. And that is really when non-technical people, business executives from sales to marketing, just simply want to talk with their own company's data estate, both structured and unstructured data, using their business's own terminology and definitions. So things like internal chatbots or being able to search through your your internal documents, your Slack channels, your Salesforce, that's like all internal based. Externally, companies are still a little hesitant, but we are seeing a lot of great wins. I was just at Ford Direct's national conference, and they have the great external chatbot that companies are using. We help Fox Sports, going back to sports, do a really cool external win where during the Super Bowl, like one of the biggest events of the year, they had an external chatbot where just anyone can ask a question. When was the last time, the Patriots won a Super Bowl? Or when was the last time this person did this in the rain? So some of the early external wins are very tightly curated chatbots, but also summarization and sentiment analysis and better customer 360. Those are like key use cases that are with the Gen AI world. I'm seeing early wins.
Yeah, I love that. Keeping the sports theme, the
Yeah.
Fox use case is a really cool one. How about you, Vicky? What have you seen customers share?
Yeah, I totally agree that most customers or most users we've seen are mostly focused on internal and productivity use cases. So how do they, as Ari mentioned, how do they interrogate their knowledge base, or how do they make their engineers 10 times more productive, or make their data analysts 10 times more productive? Or even their legal teams is another one we've seen a lot, kind of legal ops. And I would say same thing externally. The chat, customer support chat has probably been the biggest one that folks are starting with productionizing. But what we've seen so far is most get stuck at the gap between the internal and the external use case, and that's probably where most folks are right now, just at the cusp. We're like, how I want to do this in production, but I'm not quite there yet, or I don't trust it fully yet.
So to tack onto that, what are the challenges? You mentioned trust as one of them, but what are the main challenges they're facing from either going from those internal to external use cases or just getting started on either one at all?
That's a good question. I would say what the first thing that comes to mind even is the challenge of like, well, where do I start, or what do I do? When LLMs became available, at first everyone thought it's like, oh, I'm going to need to fine tune an LLM, or I'm going to need to be, in order to benefit from these, I'm going to need to be the company building my own model or fine tuning my own version of the model. And as these technologies have gotten much more advanced and have developed further, that's really not the game field, or that's not really the field anymore. It's not about the models, right? The powerful models are now a commodity. It's about the context or the data you can bring to it. So what we see, and really what we're trying to help customers do is leverage that gold mine, as we used to say also for structured data, but leverage that data that is unique to them, and let that be their competitive advantage. Because really nowadays it's not going to be about how powerful your model is. It's going to be about how good the data is you bring to that model. So I would say the biggest challenge there has been the context engineering. It's like, what data do I have? What data can I bring to it? How can I focus its attention to the correct context? And how do I bring context that won't contradict itself, so that the AI doesn't hallucinate or cause or give poor responses?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Ari, you mentioned earlier chatbots. Vicky mentioned it too. I feel like anyone who has read anything about AI is also hearing about chatbots. Looking past what companies are doing today into what is going to happen tomorrow, what does the next generation of enterprise AI look like? What's needed to get there, and how is Databricks helping enterprises get there faster?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, companies, like following up on Vicky was saying, they want to look at their own data. So, the world of generalized LLM is great for the public, but for an actual company, they want the insights are going to be better if it's based on their own specific data. So, some examples, generalized LLMs, large models are trained on Formula One races and who won them, or Taylor Swift lyrics, or World War One trivia. And that may be very helpful for a very small percentage, but companies want it based, like, where is my supply chain running low, or where is fraud being detected, or what type of data is missing since the last refresh. They want it on their own data. So that's number one, where the market is heading. And then, just like a good history, and where Databricks fits in is, the rapid change of the world. About 10, 12 years ago or so, you had like two entire worlds: the structured world, which was like data warehousing and OLTP databases, an unstructured world, which were like data lakes, and they were like complete silos. You can't run SQL queries on unstructured. You can't do certain types of AI on like just bits and pieces. You can't even do like visualizations, Tableau, Power BI, when data is scattered everywhere. So that was like one of the biggest challenges that was solved by what's called the data lake house. It's a term, interestingly, that Databricks came up with on a play of words for data warehouse and a data lake. We actually chose not to copyright or trademark that, since we wanted it to be an entire industry, but then you want to own the industry. It's, as an aside, a marketing tactic, which paid off. But yeah, there are many companies that offer lake houses now. And now almost every company out there has a lake house from one vendor or another. And then 2.5 years ago, when GenAI came out, these data intelligence platforms started popping up, which basically leverages GenAI, whether it's an LLM or other techniques, to just help companies get more intelligence out of their data. So that could be where Anomalo fits in, like the data quality and root cause analysis, since you need good data to have good quality insights, BI, classic GenAI, or other. So yeah, Databricks fits in that we created the open lake house based on open source. So it's just an area where your whole end-to-end, wherever your data is, gets unified. It's extremely scalable, but then it's also governed. We govern through Unity Catalog. And governance, yes, is access control. And that's super important in the world of Gen AI, where it's almost like you scramble the eggs and you still want like downstream, like what you build upon your raw data. If there's private information and you kind of blend it up a little bit, you still want that private information to have the right access control. But then governance is also being able to understand what's going on with your data, what's the lineage of your data from raw source to your notebooks to your visualizations and now to the Gen AI. And where the future's headed. I love your shirt, Vicky. The future's unstructured. So one answer of that is unstructured is um, growing so much more rapidly than structured data. But let's not like immediately like put the structured use cases on the back burner, since that's still like 85% of production use cases are your traditional machine learning. But the future, absolutely, as companies are getting more and more insights, saw this in the sports world and other industries, they're going to be adopting more and more. So everyone hears of agentic systems. It's that concept, Vicky and I were talking a little bit, starting to talk about where you have smaller models that are really good at specific tasks. And then how do you string them together? How do you judge which model is better than the other? Kind of like ML ops in the day, but now it's LLM ops. So like agentic systems that learn and keeping humans in the loop. I think people are quickly realizing that that's super important. So if you're someone that's familiar with how your business works and what your data looks like, that your job is going to be more and more important. But Gen AI needs to embrace the humans in the loop for the best, most accurate insights.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. Oh, please go ahead, Vicky.
I got inspired by Ari's answer. There's a couple of things there that I love. The first one being is okay, like, are folks just going to abandon the traditional ML use cases and go entirely for AI? And that's something that's the type of panic that we've seen with a lot of early adopters and early users. Like, well, like now I need to go through and rebuild everything for AI, and how do I, start from scratch almost. And what we found is, or what really we're trying to evangelize is that you don't need to do that, right? That you can extract, for example, take the unstructured data and extract whatever structured information can feed your downstream processes or analyses or your dashboards that you have already running. So the idea that to be on the cutting edge of AI or to be leveraging AI, you need to kind of overhaul all your systems and then start from scratch. I think that that's something that we're challenging, and we want to challenge for folks, and like, hey, like you probably will need to do that over the next, I would say, 5 years, but today you don't need to do that. You can start using AI immediately, or you can also leverage your unstructured data immediately by transforming that. And the other thing that really resonated for me is this theme of like unity and also breaking down silos. So it's like there's not going to be a single company out there that has or that's going to be just a structured data company or just an unstructured data company. So what does the future look like where you don't have 50 different tools to access each, or kind of a processing, ETL, querying structure for one, and then the same for the other? That the tools, I believe the tools that are really gonna make it out of this are the ones that allow a single interface to do everything you want with your data, whether it's structured or unstructured.
Yeah, I love that. And I think something that both of you hit on was the core role that unstructured data is going to play in the market moving forward. Albeit, it's not going to take over entirely. However, it is going to play a critical role. And so, Vicky, staying with you, I'm curious, What kinds of value are organizations leaving on the table by not tapping into that unstructured data? Things like documents, emails, tickets, and otherwise.
Um, I can tell you maybe the flip side of like give you some examples of what we've seen folks do or leverage their unstructured data for. So for example, we have a consumer goods company who has hundreds of thousands of customer reviews a day. They're one of my favorite uh, chain restaurants, though I can't name them. Hundreds of thousands of customer reviews a day, and also support tickets from their franchise restaurants. So being able to mine those for insights and understand what customers are actually complaining about. So think about it. Think about it the classic way where we used to do like NPS surveys or something like that for customers to give you the 1 to 7 on where you stand, and you get the metric after. But after that, you really task a market researcher maybe to go through and understand why folks gave you that rating. You're now able to do that at scale, right? You're able to identify revenue opportunities. You're able to identify failed launches, or even we have a customer that's a software company that's identifying which bugs people are complaining about the most and prioritizing fixing them that way. So just in general, I would say the insights that you're leaving on the table are probably uh, the biggest thing. And then there's the efficiency cost. So right, like when you're using these internal tools, you become more efficient at your job. You're powering decision making and moving faster. So there's this kind of the cost of decision making and the cost of efficiency, and also cost of maybe more straightforward, coming back to what we talked about earlier, is the customer success or customer service use cases, right? If
Yeah.
you're able to resolve those entirely using AI, or only focus your workforce to like the really hard problems, that's a cost savings, that's an improved user experience. Granted, that is one of the use cases that we see the most, where we find that folks end up just dumping all of their data to their customer service bot, and they end up deprecating it pretty much a week after they've launched it. So that's one of the main use cases where we see that having the right context is really important. Otherwise, you end up losing a lot of resources rather than having efficiencies of scale.
Got it. No, that makes sense. Ari, I read a lot about being AI ready. And in the context of unstructured data, explain to me a little bit about what you think that actually means. How do enterprises get their unstructured data AI ready?
Yeah, so the foundation of it all, you need quality data foundation to get the best insights. If you don't have the right information on your customers or your products or your supply chain, you're going to be either giving wrong or incomplete or less accurate insights. So having the data foundation is like that's the foundation of it all. So many years ago, you'd be at a conference and everyone's talking about data, and you'd kind of have to awkwardly whisper, you really need to be AI ready. These are great use cases. And now it's almost flipped where you go to conferences and everyone's like, we need agentic systems and RAG augmentation. And you're like, well, slow down. You still need the quality data. So for the traditional AI and machine learning, on structured data, which is typically like taking in structured information, rows, columns, numbers, small amounts of text, and predicting what's coming next in the sequence, like what will our sales be, will our supply chain kind of break down, and classification, like is this product likely to break down like this engine. But now the unstructured data, it's better informing your traditional AI. So you could do AI ready just on unstructured data like videos, Word docs, PDFs. An example of that would be looking at 1 million documents and seeing which one they are lacking a human signature on. How boring would it be to have a human look through a million documents, but in
Mhm.
a millisecond, AI can inform the unstructured data. But AI ready is really having the system in place to, it's called feature engineering or extracting some metadata from the unstructured data into structured. So like taking these reviews Vicky was talking about and saying for each review on a scale of 1 to 10, what's their sentiment? 10 being super positive. Or from these videos, what's the theme or how much speaking time did each person have? You want to extract information from unstructured and then feed that into everything else you're doing, whether it's BI, um, predictive analytics, visual analysis, or chatbots.
Yeah. Vicky, I'd love to get your opinion on this one too. What are you seeing in your work with customers? What does AI ready mean? How does data quality play a role in that specific to unstructured data?
Maybe to give you all some, I find this to be a funny question based on where we stand, but maybe to give you all some context. We gave you context at the beginning that we're a data quality company, and we started off with a very strong hypothesis that data quality is equivalent to AI readiness, right? That's our bread and butter. That's what we understand the best, and that's actually the first product we build within Unstructured as well. And something that surprised me, I would say, as we went on with that, as we took that to market, is that AI readiness, just a data quality piece, or just identifying issues was not enough for AI readiness. It's the understanding and being able to productionalize those insights or that understanding has been one of the biggest barriers to adoption or to AI readiness. So even with that in mind, what we did is, okay, we have this data quality piece. We identify the issues in your data, but now just talking about, Ari mentioned at the beginning, like the sheer volume of the data you're dealing with unstructured data. Well, like it's not enough to flag the issues. You now need something that will automatically resolve them, right? If you have PII or if you have compliance issues, how can you build a workflow on top of that to redact the issue or maybe flag for human review? So get you to a point where not only are you confident in that there's no issues in your data, but you're also confident that if they arise, I can resolve them and move forward with whatever I'm building downstream from it.
Yeah. I think this ties into something that Ari mentioned earlier around governance and the fact that one of the ways that Databricks is helping these organizations isn't just, some of the Gen AI capabilities or, the lakehouse architecture, but it's also the governance that's offered in-house. So Ari, would like your take on, um, how do you view Databricks' role in governance play into, the move into AI for enterprises?
Yeah, it's central to the whole industry, like the Databricks data lakehouse, the Databricks data intelligence platform, and Unity Catalog, which, by the way, was open sourced about a year ago. Um, but it's really central, like when Vicky was saying, having one platform, one source of truth is huge. And the reason for that being huge and why you want to govern it all is if you're having a question like, how can I improve my supply chain? You want the structured data of like your historical log of inventory and shipments, but you also want to join in unstructured data. Maybe it's weather, like if it's snowing out in certain areas, that's going to affect your supply chain. If the price of interest rate changes or certain commodities that you're building a product changes, you want that to be fed in real time into your insight. So businesses want like that end-to-end governance of all of your data. So you just ask a question, what can I do to improve my supply chain? Um, and now Databricks has this thing called AI BI Genie,
Yeah.
where automatically everything that's already plugged into Unity Catalog, all your metrics, all your semantic layer, and all your raw data and everything, you could just ask a question. Um, what were my sales? What were my sales attributed to Garrett? Things like that, and it will just answer for you. Um, so that's like, and then deep research is like the latest and greatest. It's in preview right now, but that's the ability to ask even more open-ended questions. Like one example is in our own marketing team, you can ask a question, how can we improve our marketing campaign? And it does not just a chatbot, but it does actual research. It breaks the question down into, okay, what is a marketing campaign? How do we manage that? And in the end, it told us, hey, Ari, if you, sorry to speak in the third person, but the response was in natural language. Hey, Ari, if you break down the campaigns into 3 groups, small, medium, and large companies, and you do these messages in each, we think you will have, better, click-throughs, better purchase rates. And by the way, here's how we define based on the data, how the AI defines small, medium, and large. And then you have a human in the loop saying thumbs up, thumbs down, typing in more commands, hey, wait, this data goes back to 1990. Make it include data starting in 2020 only. So you could do things like that now. And that's all driven now through Databricks, through our data intelligence platform, and governed with Unity Catalog.
Yeah, I think what Databricks is doing with AI BI Genie is so cool. Unlike both of you, I do not have an extensive background as a data practitioner. However, I have always been a data consumer. I'm the person asking those questions, and historically, they go into a ticket queue to build a new dashboard, or there's this long extended process. And what I would have given, 12 years ago when I was a financial analyst just to be able to type that in a chat box and get an answer. It's incredible where we are today.
You're
Uh,
glad you saw that. It's total democracy.
yeah, it's incredible.
And Garrett, I will say that even with my data background, I feel exactly the same. so it's not unique to you. And I feel like I also get so excited about everything Databricks is building and all the advancements that are making, like how you can leverage your data to begin with. And I love that. I love our partnership and what we've been able to do in terms of, hey, like let's provide you the trusted data foundation, and then let's unleash the Databricks superpowers around, like, hey, can I surface those insights to you? Can I go and scan and answer all the questions you might have of your data?
Yeah, no, love it. It's perfect relationship. And actually, I learned Databricks actually invested in Anomalo, so not just a paper relationship, but like really tight. But no, you're exactly right. You need both ends: the data quality, structured and now unstructured, and then the ability to like unify it and make sense out of it all and scale.
So to wrap up here, I have one final question for you both, and then we're gonna open it up to Q&A. Let's look forward 3 years. What role do you think that enterprise AI or rather, unstructured data will play in shaping the most competitive, slash intelligent enterprises? Let's start with you, Vicky, and then we'll go to you, Ari.
It's an easy one. Predict the future 3 years from now. um, well, first of all, I'm a data person, so I would be lying if I said I knew where this was going, right? If I just look back 3 years ago and where we were and where we are today, there's no chance I would have predicted this. I probably would have predicted 10 years or something like that. So just the sheer speed with what things are moving or kind of technologies are advancing has been crazy to witness. And I think we're also incredibly lucky to have been witnessing it. I would say, again, I referenced this in the beginning, but I think the biggest role that I feel that AI will play in, or unstructured data will play in shaping AI is, again, companies that are able to leverage their unique context or their unique data to build bespoke things based on it, because that's going to be the differentiator going forward, right? Even with the open source models, things like DeepSeek, we're able to achieve almost parity between some of the best models out there. So I think the companies that pull ahead, maybe outside of the frontier labs, are going to be the companies that are able to either think of a novel application of AI, or an application that is, or that they're specifically uniquely positioned to support because they have decades of context on it. And that's probably one of the coolest things that I've seen. I'm obviously a startup person. I've worked for startups pretty much my entire career, but I've seen a lot of enterprises who feel like, oh, like we move slower, we're going to be left behind by this. But something that's really cool about this transition too is actually enterprises have a lot of advantage here, because they're the ones that have the decades of unstructured data that's been scanned as PDFs and sitting somewhere in their systems. So we've seen some of the largest enterprises in the US right now are starting to, someone just asked me yesterday, it's like, well, I see you support Word documents, but we have the really old version of Word files. You support that too. So now they're just starting to go back into the archive and seeing what they can dig up from there.
I love it.
Yes.
Anything to add there, Ari?
Yeah. So it is really hard to predict future of like humanity or enterprise data, and humans, myself included, are good at predicting if there's no innovation in the world, like what is the trend growing. But things like ChatGPT and like other major improvements which have been happening like every 3 to 4 years in the world are impossible to predict. But just even assuming there's no like major innovation, which I'm sure there will be, unstructured data growing way faster than structured data, and it's accelerating as the tools appear that make it easier to consume and understand. So we need platforms and industry solutions like Anomalo and Databricks to help companies better manage their whole data estate. So I used to be the president of the Worldwide Oracle User Group, and we would say there's no way a company will need more than a couple 100 billion records. But now you're talking trillions or tens of trillions of records, and LLMs, GenAI, need the massive amounts of data. And you also, in the coming years, more improvements and more near real-time processing. And the theme of Moneyball was adapt or die. And I used to kind of blush saying that, not the most sense of urgency, but now, like seeing what I've seen in the last year, definitely being more emphatic that companies do need to adapt or die, and people for their own careers need to adapt, or it'll be a lot of challenging. And I think things are accelerating, so we all need to buckle up.
I love it. Perfect. Well, we have some questions here in the chat that I'm gonna send over to you both. So first, what role does cybersecurity play in unstructured data? Uh, Vicky, I see you nodding your head, so I'm gonna pass this one to you first.
That's a great question. I would say probably even more important than it has been historically, right? You need cybersecurity to be able to protect um, unstructured data, because very often, especially if you think of emails or PDFs or support tickets, that's where a lot of PII occurs, or like names, email, or contact information, social security numbers, even medical records, and things like that. So I would say cybersecurity becomes almost more important, because now almost everyone can make sense of that data that you're seeing, right? A table, being able to access a table is one thing. And we all know when you're given a table that you don't know what's in there, it's good luck understanding it. But seeing someone's email and being able to read through it and understand, it's right, it's written in our language. Anyone can understand it and access that. So I would say biggest role here would be being able to proactively monitor for risks. So having systems in place to detect cybersecurity risks before they happen, and also doing things like anonymization, redacting, or removing those risks before they hit your systems and before you're exposed down the line.
Yeah, that's great. All right, next question. I'm going to point this one to you, Ari. It's about data governance. This person is asking, how have you seen data governance been implemented? Do you have an example of a successful, real life use case?
Yeah, so yeah, I would say every company, which is over 12,000 of Databricks companies, have effectively leveraged the governance. So, like at the fundamental level, just having access control to anywhere you have more than one person in your organization, you're going to want, on one hand, governance access control, but kind of like to flip it and look at it like collaboration. So you have two or three or 3,000 or 300,000 employees or customers or partners all collaborating on data. And then the underlying governance, whether it's Delta Lake, Unity Catalog, et cetera, takes care of who accesses what. There's also governance in things that are called like a data marketplace, where you could safely share data across business units or across companies. There's a concept of clean rooms, where even if you're competitive, you sometimes want to share data. So, for example, you're two competing beverage companies. You could benefit by sharing certain amount of data that like kind of raises the bar for everyone. Everyone can service their customers better, but you're not giving away this private information. So that's like clean rooms, marketplace are like the data sharing capability. And then in terms of governance for transparency, it really has accelerated with Gen AI, since you do that, the chatbot example, like what were Anomalo's sales pipelines in this past quarter. You want to understand, was this data based on something that was 10 years ago or 1 year ago? Or was this data like a year ago, we were collecting this insight, but now we're no longer collecting the insight, and the reports are kind of basing on what you call null values. So that's like governance in terms of lineage and transparency, and almost every company implements it. But in terms of like macro level governance, financial services, banks, looking at fraud detection. Also in the video game company, I was just in Finland. I met with the CEO of Supercell. If there are any Clash of Clans or Clash Royale, Brawl Stars, their offices are amazing, but they use governance a lot to keep track of their 300 million monthly video game players and make sure people are doing what they're supposed to do. Toxicity, where little kids put in curse words, that gets handled in real time before it's a non-fun or hostile environment. And those are all examples of governance.
Those are great examples. Okay, and then last question, I'm going to point this one at you, Vicky. I think it's a product specific question. It's, what policies do you have for data retention? How do you keep the data healthy? I'll let you interpret that second one, but tell us a little bit about that.
So maybe first on data retention, that's entirely configurable by you and your systems. Anomaly never takes data out of your environments. Actually, one of our deployment models is entirely in VPC. So you take Anomaly, install it into your machines, and we sit on top of your data sources, checking it, and then never take anything out. So I would say that in terms of retention, that's entirely up to your use cases or even the regulations you're dealing with. Maybe you're in Europe or depending on your locale. In terms of keeping your data healthy, that's a great question. I would say the biggest piece is obviously the data quality piece, being able to continuously monitor and identify issues in the data. And then I alluded to it earlier, but one of the newest things we've built on top of that is being able to resolve these issues at scale. So once you identify issues, can you build workflows and schedule workflows to constantly be checking the data and redacting PII, redacting abusive language, as Ari mentioned, or removing contradictory content from your knowledge base and then creating a clean data set that you can then point both kind of manual analyses or AI systems to that new clean data set. So I would say it's a process, but it starts with identifying the issues, mitigating them, and then being able to run that over and over again. And frankly, also integrating with the governance systems and the catalog. So where you can see, you can surface and democratize the information of like, what data is healthy? What are the issues I'm seeing? Who can resolve it? Are there any resolutions that are pending?
Wonderful.
So building the end-to-end system there.
Yeah.